Our first reading this morning is from the late Howard Zinn, a man whose take on history and whose support of Martin Luther King and whose call to withdraw from Vietnam was considered so controversial by the United States government that he was labeled a high security risk and thus subject to immediate arrest should the USA enter into a state of emergency. This is from his 2006 book, A Power Governments Cannot Suppress. To be hopeful in bad times is not just foolishly romantic. It is based on the fact that human history is a history not only of cruelty, but also of compassion, sacrifice, courage, and kindness. What we choose to emphasize in this complex history will determine our lives. If we see only the worst, it destroys our capacity to do something. If we remember those times and places, and there are so many, where people have behaved magnificently, this gives us the energy to act, and at least the possibility of sending this spinning top of a world in a different direction. And if we do act in however small a way, we don't have to wait for some grand utopian future. The future is an infinite succession of present moments, and to live now as we think human beings should live, in defiance of all that is bad around us, is itself a marvelous victory.
Our second reading this morning also comes from an outspoken and controversial author, Arundhati Roy. Her novel, The God of Small Things, won accolades around the world. She doesn't confine her activism to writing. She's also visionary and quite political, filled with fiery hope and strong critiques of worldwide government-sponsored oppression. Roy wrote, "Our strategy should not only be to confront empire, but to lay siege to it, to deprive it of oxygen, to shame it, to mock it with our art, our music, our literature, our stubbornness, our joy, our brilliance, our sheer relentlessness, and our ability to tell our own stories. Stories that are different than the ones we are being brainwashed to believe. The corporate revolution will collapse if we refuse to buy what they are selling, their ideas, their version of history, their wars, their weapons, their notion of inevitability. Remember this, we be many and they be few. They need us more than we need them. Another world is not only possible, she is on her way. And on a quiet day, I can hear her breathing."
Pray for your enemy. Welcome the stranger. Welcome the stranger. Show love to your neighbor. Show love to your neighbor. We're in this till the end. Pray for your enemy. Welcome the stranger. Welcome the stranger. Show love to your neighbor. Show love to your neighbor. We're in this till the end. We're in this till the end.
Not sure where this white beard came from. It seems like not that long ago, I was like the young groovy minister coming in to bring toddlers and kids into the congregation. As my years in ministry start to pile up, I've noticed a few things. Most striking is that there's now a full-on next generation of ministers coming up behind me, all shiny and eager. And some of those younger colleagues have begun asking me about different parts of ministry. And often the conversation turns to worship, and they'll ask how I approach sermons each Sunday. I think more specifically, they're asking, what does it mean to preach Sunday after Sunday after Sunday, year after year? And imagining then what it would mean to preach for decade upon decade. And I think the unstated question is, when do you run out of things to say? And I want to be clear here, as I am in those conversations, that our worship, Unitarian Universalist worship, is a shared enterprise. Certainly, I, Vicky, other ministers that are here with you are central and have a lot to do with shaping it, providing focus. But worship is primarily about what we're all searching for, together and individually, what we're all struggling with, individually and collectively. And the world of which we're all a part will almost dictate themes and ideas. Each week it offers a war, a hurricane, an election that is a hurricane, a shooting, a flood, some unbelievable injustice. But that very same world also offers reports of remarkably kind acts, works of astonishing self-sacrifice, a sparkling, golden, beautiful fall day, a truce, a declaration of rights, an astounding work of art, be it painting or music or film. In some sense, the art of preaching is really to just pay attention to what's going on around you, to wrestle with it publicly, and to find a way to give people some hope. To help us turn toward the world instead of away from the world. And now, for me, these last few weeks have been disheartening. It's easy to think it's harder and harder to have reason for hope. But I still think that has more to do with the media than it does with the world. You know, I talk often in Rockland, where I served, about the world teetering on this brink between breakdown and breakthrough, and how we seem to be poised on the edge of one or the other or both at the same time. Civilization may be unraveling in a lot of areas. Some of its structures may be collapsing. But it's also in the midst of this tremendous upheaval of creativity, a flood of innovation and genius and love, this pouring out of millions upon millions of people, this great awakening. And to me, it feels far louder and more interesting than the sleepy resignation or the corrosive maliciousness, that ignominious decline that the media prefers to focus on. But most importantly, when I'm talking to my fresher colleagues, I pass on the advice that one of my mentors, Olav Newyar, gave to me. And he said, just live your life, engage with your life in the world, cook your supper, wash the dishes, take a walk with a friend, hold hands with your beloved, marvel at the wisdom of children, or just grab a cup of coffee in the morning down at your local cafe, and your sermons will write themselves. And truly, a number of my sermons do begin with conversations that I've had on a trip or downtown or in the middle of set break at a show. And this sermon too starts from a random conversation at a coffee shop that I had in San Jose where I was recently. A guy at the coffee shop tells me about a dance contest that he's going to be in that evening. It's going to start at 7 and it'll go till about midnight. It's going to be fun, that I should stop by. Now, I had an agenda. I had like this tight schedule. I'm not really type A, but I don't get to the West Coast often anymore. And there's a lot of people and places that I want to see or go to or witness or visit again when I'm there. But for whatever reason, I decided to take this man's invitation, and I actually did go to the contest that night. And I paid my $10, and I went through the entrance room, and I found this back room without any windows. And there were these two, I don't know, maybe 10 by 20 dance floors. And one floor served as the contest floor. There was 5 seats along one of the edges for the judges, and the other dance floor was just for practice space, kind of a place for just plain fun. And people just danced all night on that second dance floor for joy. And to be honest, I didn't really understand what was going on or what the rules of the contest were. But I could tell you that the dancers were in pairs, and each pair would enter and start dancing. And I could tell that they weren't dancing choreographed pieces. The pairs didn't pick the music, and they were just kind of improvising together. And I guess breakdancing is what comes to mind first when I think about their movements, but it was so much more than that. There were these movements that were so slow and fluid, and there were people doing leaps and gymnastics. I really couldn't believe it. And many of you may know that breakdancing was developed originally as a way of competing, of addressing conflicts without violence. But everyone was there dancing with grins on their faces. Each of them dancing at each other and challenging each other, but all in really good fun. But let me tell you what else I saw. I saw 8-year-old kids dancing, competing with adults. I saw men and women and folk all along the continuum of gender identity and expression. I saw folks in their teens and 20s and 30s and 40s dancing. I saw people competing with and against each other with these great big smiles on their faces the entire time that I was there, and hugging each other and walking around after their contest with their arms around each other's shoulders, no matter who had won according to the judges. They were congratulating each other. I saw people on the other dance floor, the fun practice floor, receiving constant blessing and congratulations, affirmation. I saw people who were slender with stick-straight bodies, and I saw people who were heavy-set, solid like a bag of cement. I saw very tall dancers, and I saw dancers much closer to the ground. I saw people in every shape. I saw people of every ethnicity and color that you can imagine in this perfect demographic representation of the world. Or to use the more common words, I saw people with clear roots in Asia, both east and southeast and south, with roots in Latin America, both central and south. I saw people with roots in the Middle East, in Europe and Africa and Polynesia, and wondrous mixtures of every one of those origins, forging these beautiful features and skin colors never before seen in the human palate. I was just drinking all of this in. And the contest went on for hours, and I was happy. And in Cummings' words, I was almost inarticulate with thanks throughout the entire experience. And about a half hour into it, I was beginning to feel something inside me that I couldn't quite put my hands on. I couldn't name in any easy way. And it started to almost bother me, trying to find words for it. But suddenly, in a flash, it occurred to me that what I was experiencing, I was feeling the actual experience of living in hope. I was in this state of hope. I was submerged in hope. I was lit up with hope. Alive with hope. And not hope as some highfalutin cardinal virtue or comforting theological expression of what's going to come, but hope actually blowing through my flesh. Hope in the present moment. I tasted in that windowless room for just a little bit the world to come. The world as that I had always best imagined it, but not as something to come in the future, but as already here, not far away in some utopian day in the future. In the Gospel of Thomas, there's this interesting dialogue between the teacher Jesus and his students. And they ask their teacher, when is the realm of God, or the era of love and justice for all, would be another good translation. When is the realm of God finally going to arrive? And Jesus answered, well, it's already here. Spread across the whole earth, you're just not seeing it. And I know sometimes it's hard to see, because we're inundated with all the negatives, both the real and the invented crises, the self-inflicted wounds of our politics. Or there's times that we'll use the word hope as a simple substitute for the word wish. I hope everything goes well during your surgery, or I hope you get your wallet back. This simple wishing for good for others. And that's fine. There's nothing wrong with that sentiment, but it's really just common courtesy. It's not a powerful emotion or expression. But what I experienced at that contest was not a common courtesy. It was something much stronger. It's like what I would feel in my congregation on a lot of Sundays listening to Sojourner play her improvised pieces during our offering. It's what I felt here when we sang like softly and deeply and soulfully together just a few moments ago. It's what I would feel in Rockland seeing this growing community of our thriving kids. That feeling of singing together, the deep bonds that exist, that ease even when things aren't easy, of real community. The courage we give each other, the ways that we hold each other in this faith. It's something powerful and something joyful, something transcendent and more profound and deeper than the world of shootings and crises and war that is so prevalent in our awareness right now. Like Howard Zinn, I try to hold the tension in that dual truth in worship. That beside the horrible events which throw themselves at us every single day, we can also be every single day joyfully ambushed by the good things all around us. Actions of love and compassion, stories of remarkable forgiveness and community support. Very often, my worship services are my attempts to respond to both of those realities. The shockingly painful and the astonishingly beautiful. In Zinn's great words, to be hopeful in bad times is not foolishly romantic. It's based on the fact that human history is a history not only of cruelty, but also of compassion and sacrifice and courage and kindness. What we choose to emphasize in this complex history will determine our lives. If we only see the worst, it destroys our capacity to do anything. If we remember those times and places, and there are so many, where people have behaved magnificently, this gives us the energy to act, and at least the possibility of sending this spinning top of a world off in a different direction. And if we do act in some small way, we don't have to wait around for some utopian future. The future, he says, is an infinite succession of present moments, and to live now as we think human beings best ought to live, in defiance of all that is bad around us, is itself a remarkable victory. Exactly. At that dance contest, I witnessed a victory. Not one dance team over another, or one couple over another. I witnessed a victory for humanity, present today, now, not later. I was there. I could feel it. Roy says the same thing with even greater power, almost an aggressive power. Our strategy should be not only to confront empire, but to lay siege to it, to deprive it of oxygen. Now, that is not a weak metaphor. With our art, our literature, our stubbornness, our joy, our brilliance, our sheer relentlessness, and our ability to tell our own stories. Stories that are different than the ones we've been brainwashed to believe. The corporate revolution will collapse if we refuse to buy what they're selling. Their version of history, their notion of inevitability. The notion of inevitability is the precise opposite of the word hope. At that dance studio, I was in the midst of the positive, not the negative. I was in this room of many colors and many styles with a great deal of joy and welcome. I was seeing with my own eyes the realm of love and justice for all, the realm of God in the words of the Gospel of Thomas, but already right now spread across the earth. It wasn't some hope for what's to come. It was hope in body present, already here. I touched it, if only for a few moments. And so I think about my now younger colleagues and their worship. And I go back to that advice from my mentor, Olaf. He said, just live your life. Let yourself be open to what's right there in front of you, and over again, the sermon you want to give will simply jump up onto the pulpit and deliver itself. And best, and most of all of your career, you're only going to be the servant to the sermon that comes to you as a gift, because you choose to live your life, and you will live in gratitude all the rest of your days. And it's been true. And may it be for you too. May you live your lives open to possibility and opportunity, and may you too live in gratitude all of your days. It's my wish for you this morning.